Hi, my name is Betty and I'm from Ethiopia. I like to play soccer and my favorite subject is math.
Ni hao, my name is Edwin. I'm from China. I've been here for 1 year. My favorite sport is badminton. I hate math. Okay, can I say that?
Hi, my name is Deborah. I'm from a little town from Brazil called Goiás, and I have been here in Georgia for 2 years.
Hello, my name is Yuri. I'm from Ukraine. I like to backpack in Ukrainian mountains and teach Brazilian beginners.
In this video, you will see several scenarios including co-teaching, instructional supports or scaffolds, sheltered classrooms, and the importance of setting up networks between the school, students, and their parents. In a co-teaching or collaborative classroom setting, understanding your co-teacher and how together you will determine what content concepts are necessary and what text and language features are vital to the task completion can determine how successful your classroom is.
So our last unit that we ended up was Native Americans and mapping. So we had a little bit of mapping left over. Our fourth instructional week block is maps, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And our forces of nature on moving ground and predicting is literacy.
Pre-planning is really important, particularly when you're working in another teacher's classroom, because if you're not, you're kind of just winging it, and that doesn't really work for anyone, for the teachers or for the kids.
In the standards, it asks about locating geographic information.
We first looked at the standards to see what we needed to cover, both the content standards and then the language standards. And then we broke it down, the content standards were mapping, and then we broke down the language standards into the reading, writing, grammar, vocabulary kinds of things. And then we sort of started talking about some activities that might come with each of those.
The most important part of that is the fact that we do use all of those things to come up with our activities and our lessons. Understanding it in design starts with the end in mind. What do I want my students to understand at the very end? And that always comes from the standard. And they may be beginning, they may be advanced, they may be intermediate, but I know at the end they all have to know this or understand this topic or idea or theme. It's a different way of looking at it, but I think that now teaching is much more intentional now than it was before, and to the point. Which word from the passage sounds most like what it describes? Ooh, fizzle, ember, cool. I know they know what lava is because they talk about it with the sun all the time,
yeah.
But fizzle, how are we going to explain that for our students that are not going to know what fizzle is? Did they hear a soft fizzle as each ember drowned?
I'm wondering if we can have like a, if you have a cup with,
Alka-Seltzer?
yeah, we were thinking like even, yeah, you have like hydrogen peroxide or something in it, and you have like a little eyedropper, and you drop something like baking soda or something in it that will make it
Fizzle?
Yeah.
Or we could just do Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't that fizzle?
Probably, I don't know. Yeah.
Did they hear a stop? Okay, so Alka-Seltzer.
Okay.
Or some
sort of
scientific experiment. Building in supports is probably the number one part of the job as far as teaching. And when I'm thinking and I'm planning and I'm trying to figure out how to reach all my kids, I always try to make it more relevant for everyone, including my ELL, including my native speakers, because the more relevant I can make it, the better off everyone is.
Around the country, a number of school districts are restructuring mainstream classrooms. ESL and mainstream teachers are collaborating as co-teachers to better integrate English language learners into classrooms with their English proficient peers in order to work toward language acquisition and academic achievement simultaneously.
I always remind the teachers that I'm training that there are different roles and responsibilities, because often when you're starting co-teaching, there's lack of clarity about who does what. And sometimes the ESL teacher feels like an assistant, and sometimes they feel kind of inadequate because they may not know the content. Sometimes the classroom teacher doesn't know what to do with the ESL teacher, like they don't understand their function. So in figuring it all out, we try to remind everybody of the responsibility. And it is clear. So ESL teachers are responsible for the language part of any task, and the mainstream teacher is responsible for the content part.
Co-teaching is an amazing experience. I love working with Mr. Forker. They told me at the beginning of the year I'll get to be working with him in this special language learner collaborative environment, and I was very excited. I had a lot of the language learners last year, but without the help of that collaborative teacher.
The best thing I did when my first year collaborating this year is I spent a significant amount of time at the beginning of the year going over collaborative norms with the people I'm working with, and I've collected from anybody that knew anything about collaborating. What do you think about this? What's the classroom going to be like? What kind of procedures do you have? All the questions, even the most, well, what are you going to wear tomorrow? This kind of like too many questions almost, but to the point now when we encounter problems, that door's open, we can walk through together, and we can have those conversations we need to have to benefit the students.
And it really just brings an interesting dynamic into a language learning classroom to be able to have that instructor there who knows about how to reach language learners specifically. So for me, it's a fabulous experience just to have that extra set of hands, that extra brain, that extra pair of eyes sometimes, and someone who really knows about how to reach the language learning students and who can speak Spanish. That's fantastic too.
See, I'm trying to trick you. You didn't fall for it.
Okay, if you look on your desk, you're going to see that you've got all the lab equipment that you need for today's lab.
Today in class, we extracted DNA from the nucleus of strawberry cells. We do a lot of prep work in the course of the unit in introducing words and ideas, and then when we do an elaborate lab like this, we're just kind of pulling it all together for them.
Look at it. All right, so in this diagram, it says it's a plant cell. So do you remember where is the DNA?
My goal for our ELL students was that they could get through the steps, which weren't that really difficult, but that they had to be done in a certain order, that they would understand those steps. But most of all, that they could see the purpose of it. The purpose was that they were taking out that DNA so that they could see it, and that DNA is a real thing, even in a strawberry. You also might want to use your whole
as much as you can get.
that way.
Having Angie in the classroom is a real good support mechanism for our ELLs, because what we're doing in that class is we're trying to keep the ELLs in a traditional classroom, but they do need some support, particularly in the beginning with language skills. And so what Angie does is I'm bouncing around the classroom and I'm talking and we're drawing pictures and we're doing all kinds of fun stuff. And Angie just kind of stands in the background, so when they need a little bit of support, they very discreetly lean over and ask her to clarify, and she clarifies, and the class does not get disrupted. The flow of the class continues, and they are allowed to go right along with everybody else in the classroom.
Okay. Now, we have to let it
James, I'm breaking the cell wall, and where's all the DNA going? Look at that. That is so awesome. That's
the DNA, right?
That's the DNA, yeah.
I love working with Ms. Johnson. She is energetic. She's passionate about biology. She's compassionate towards the students. And my hope for the students was that they could keep up. I was so proud of them because they were among the first to be finished with those questions. So they obviously understood the experiment. The student who sits at the very end, she's probably the lowest in terms of her English skills. But when she could see the DNA swirling around in the test tube, I knew that she got it. So she couldn't always express the answers to the questions, but she understood the purpose of the experiment, and she saw the DNA. So that was, to me, success.
We had trial and error, but we have found that what we're doing in the classroom is so much more than just teaching science. That's why they're there, but they're also there to learn language skills, to develop study habits, to gain confidence and trust. And that is something that comes along, and you need to nurture that. Angie and I have found that the class as a whole ends up taking on a very sweet disposition. And the English-speaking students are very compassionate, empathetic, and extremely helpful to the ELLs. I personally think that experience not only benefits the ELLs in a regular class, but the English-speaking students gain so much from working with the ELLs as well. I think it's a win-win for both students.
Often when ELL students are integrated into mainstream classes, they can benefit from pre-teaching sessions in small groups so they don't fall behind the English-speaking students.
The hat is symmetrical. The hat is symmetrical. Why is the hat symmetrical?
Because it looks different.
Is it different? Or
are the same?
Both sides are the
Well, my objective was to teach the class about symmetry. And because we have so many ELL learners, the things that helps with these students is to have a pre-teaching situation where they're given a little extra boost, and they can build the confidence that they need to participate in our larger lesson.
You need to hear a word up to 10 to 15 times before you really own that word.
Does this hat show symmetry?
I try to use all four modalities in the lesson. Of course, they listened. They heard me say symmetry, and it is symmetrical. They said it. I tried to make them say it. They read it off my little chart, and then in the end, they also, wrote down the definition of symmetry.
Melanie kind of surprised me because she is such a shy first grader with limited English, just a very sweet girl, and but not very willing to share. And after working with Mrs. Hillman and having the background knowledge that she needed for this lesson, she was able to actually process the information and come up with a great design that wasn't just copying my example. She took it a step further and made up her own design, which was very symmetrical, and she could explain it to me. So that was really exciting to see. And so I think with the help that Mrs. Hillman gave her ahead of time, it gave her the confidence to be able to verbalize what she was trying to think about.
Even when ELL students are taught in a sheltered class, there is a lot teachers can do to better prepare themselves and adapt to the needs of a growing population of students.
And it says the nuclear membrane is disappearing, right? It's important to become an ESL teacher because I'm finding that my knowledge, my experience, and my skills that I've got in working with native-speaking population aren't translating as strongly into working with the ELL population. I'm changing my teaching style a lot, looking at language in a whole different way, while still trying to preserve the rigor that these kids can handle, but present the material in a way that they can maximize on their learning, their experience. The big changes have actually come in the last 10 to 12 years, and we've suited our programs to meet the needs of our learners. We were working on some practice with looking at different steps of mitosis and cell division. It's a difficult concept because of its abstractness. For the kids to grasp that's extremely difficult. Knowing sequence, vocabulary associated with sequence, and also adding the scientific vocabulary on top of that. And I think that's the hardest for these students because it's not a functional level of vocabulary. Some of the terms we use today, like chromosome, nuclear membrane, they won't mention again throughout the rest of the day until they see me again tomorrow, okay? So you need to figure out which step of mitosis each one of the cells are in. Why wait? I mean, the kids have the cognitive ability to learn these things, and why push it backwards for them when they're ready today? I think when we're teaching content and language together, it gives the language context. We can't wait until they learn English to begin to work with them on a content level. So I needed to combine that passion with more knowledge and skills. Within the program I'm involved with, they have a certification, which isn't as intense as a license, which I'm working toward, but it's recognizing that need for content teachers to have some kind of a background and some type of research to support what they're doing, rather than just as my colleagues joked at lunch, speak louder and slower.
We're going to do an activity together to review present tense verbs, okay? They're all brand new to the country, this class. They've been in the U.S. a year or less, some just a few months. Some have been to school, some are on grade level, some are lacking some formal education. So it's a very mixed group as far as educational background, but also English proficiency as well. They're in a sheltered class because their English proficiency level is below what the state of Georgia defines as its beginning. It's actually below beginning. In order to guarantee their success and so that they can progress with their English, they can't go into a regular 9th grade literature class or even an LEP literature point. They will get there. They just aren't ready for that right now. I think they're all kind of in the same boat with needing the visual representation, the repetition, hands-on, grouping, cooperative learning, things like that. Why is that sentence incorrect?
Porque help, what is the question? The help
They helps children.
Children, and it's plural, it's help, not
Very
help.
good. So your subject is plural, so your verb does not have an S.
Yes.
Students with interrupted formal education, or SIFs, often need additional support in developing their English language skills as they prepare to enter mainstream literature classes.
They could go to ESOL 3 for English credit. They could do 10th grade literature or 9th grade literature as well. So they do have options, and oftentimes we can double them up so that they're not a grade behind, because we're fighting against age and time when we get them in high school. So we try to move them through as fast as possible.
Research-based best practices indicate that English language learners benefit from being engaged in extended conversations using the academic language of the classroom. Explicit instruction of academic vocabulary, as well as of the structures of sentences, and engaging in reading and writing from the beginning of their language journey is very important. Because engaging in systematic, continuous academic conversations is so valuable for ELLs to learn to think in the language and learn to read and write in the target language, learning to group students strategically is valuable.
I have many different levels in my classroom, but I try to make their assignments at their level a little bit higher so that they can make gains from where they are, but so that they're not just, the tasks aren't too high for them, so it's unattainable. And I've noticed that by varying my assignments, I can achieve the I+1 for certain students. Also, I find that when they do work in collaborative groups, it helps. Like maybe one student is working at a higher level, another student not such a higher level. That student, the student that is the knower of that group, can develop a deeper understanding by having to explain it to someone else, and the child that maybe didn't have such a good understanding is now moving up that +1 and has a firmer grasp on the concept.
They're all ESOL students, and they're at a range of levels, though. We have newcomers all the way to almost independent students. And the reason that works so well is when they work together and they actually teach each other a lot more than they can learn from a teacher.
Today, for example, in their cooperation, in their cooperative groups, cooperation station, they had to glue down the pictures from the story in sequential order. For some students, that would be a challenge, but they didn't need English in order to do it, but they would get the concept of sequencing. After that, they needed to glue sentences to match each picture. This was another level where some students were, where reading the sentence, comprehending it, and matching it with a picture was their level of understanding and a little bit of a challenge. We left out 2 of the sentences so that the groups would have to write in the sentence, and this was just one more tier above, where the students needed to, that was a challenge for some of the students to go ahead and write the sentence. So there were 3 levels of instruction and challenges in the cooperative groups, and the students were able to collaborate and help each other.
And they're actually negotiating for meaning through not understanding each other. They have to help each other understand. And one of the greatest things is we have a lot of Hispanic students, Spanish-speaking students, but we also have Chinese students, and those 2 languages there's nothing, similar about them. So they have to use their English and, to come together and form some kind of meaning.
The importance of academic language is immeasurable if students are going to be able to compete in a global society. Students need functional language as well as the language of content in order to be able to keep up with the rigor of school today. English language learners no longer have the luxury of waiting a few years until they can master the social language before they begin to read academic texts, are expected to be part of the instructional conversation, or before they are expected to use appropriate discourse in defending a position in a classroom. ELLs are expected to perform academically at the same time they are acquiring their social language skills.
There's a couple different ways you could look at the use of academic language in the classroom. One way that I primarily look at it is in order for students to be successful on standardized tests and all the things that show whether or not they are being successful within parameters of the school, they need to know the academic vocabulary, academic language.
I think that it's really important for the students to understand the academic language and the language of the standards, which is a big catchphrase for us teachers, the language of the standards, because the standardized tests are written from the standards. So students, if we're using this babied language or even dumbing down the language that we use in our classrooms, then whenever the students come to the test, they're lost.
So, we're trying to access any kind of prior knowledge they have. Hopefully it could be real-world experiences, a book, a movie, anything that they've done, seen, heard, anything they know they can bring to help them connect to what we're learning and studying. It just really makes it easier for them to then, properly process it and put it in the right spot in their brain. That way they can retrieve that knowledge and use it for future situations, conversations, exams, and so forth.
The word walls that we have are taken from content-specific vocabulary. Some of them are words from the standards, others are words that we've come up with in our unit. The students know that they can always look to it for reference. We use some of the words from our last unit, and then we use some of the words from the unit that we're on now, so they can review back and make those connections and be able to see the words that we might have already covered in class, but they can still refer back to them whenever they're speaking or doing an assignment in class. And the hanging words in the wall, those are 12 keywords that students are going to see all the time on standardized tests, because a lot of times for the testing, it's just that the students don't understand what the question's asking, and that crosses all subject disciplines, math, with the word problem, science, social studies, language arts, all of it has to do with reading. So for me, the more times the students see these words that they're going to see all the time, like trace and compare and contrast, the better it's going to be for them whenever the test time comes.
Using numbers and their word form, having kids write and illustrate their own flashcards, and use of repetition cements the new academic vocabulary in the student's memory, making it easier to access when they need to use it.
The reason why I have the students make a lot of flashcards is because I found that when they do things themselves, they're more likely to remember it. So we always have them make flashcards of their sight words, of words that we want them to know, flashcards of letters that we're learning for that week.
One cart into the grocery store. Show me the word one.
I may ask them if they see any of their sight words, so I always have them looking for something when we're reading a story or doing an activity. So when they do those flashcards, it really helps them to understand that numbers have words that go along with them and that they can read those words and they can find those words in the stories that we read. For the English language learners, it really helps them because they see that all of the words that come out of their mouths can actually be written down. And it's really important for them to be able to see that their words look like something. Their words have a look.